like overflowing with South African custard. The first reason, we were talking about globally competitive yesterday. What did South Africa do to Spain? The world champions. So I think they deserve a round of applause. The world champions. And a country that didn't qualify to go to the World Cup, but we beat the current world champions. So I thought that was a beautiful expression of we are actually, if we believe and we work hard, we can do it, you know. And then the second one is there would be no other place I'd rather be this week than right here with you. To all the entrepreneurs, do you know what week it is this week? From the 18th to the 24th, what's happening around the world? Anybody? Thank you. Entrepreneurial Week. That means right now, in these few days, over 125 countries, over 7.5 million entrepreneurs are having conversations like we're having right now. They are talking and breaking the barriers and the mystics about starting your idea. They're talking about what we can do to be better entrepreneurs. So well done for actually having and hosting such an event during this time, because we can really get into the collective consciousness of what's happening around the world. So thank you. So we're on day 2, and today is really about it's the work week. It's the work day in our work labs. We're about to roll up our sleeves. We're about to really get and find those solutions, come up with really game-changing ideas. And so my talk is short, it's sweet, it's practical. It's just stuff that we can take back into our work labs and practice. It's how we can collaborate more effectively, and I've chosen sort of 7 nuggets to share with you. Before I do that, let me tell you a little bit about myself. I was born in Mthatha, which is in the Eastern Cape in South Africa. It is unfortunately one of the poorest provinces in our country. It is also the same community that Nelson Mandela was born. And our former President Thabo Mbeki comes from this area as well. And in fact, many great people, including me, come from this space. And as long as I can remember being born there, it's been poor, you know. It's got the highest unemployment rate amongst young people. We always have the least amount of A's and distinctions come matriculation time. Our corruption is one of the worst in the country. And so 26 years later, I was going, you know what? I need to be part of the solution, and I need to start doing something, and not just for the Eastern Cape, not just for South Africa, but for Africa as well. And so I went about my journey saying, well, I want to go out and prove 2 things. Number 1, not all young people in the Eastern Cape, in South Africa and Africa are unemployable. Not all young people are not leading their life, and in fact, there's a critical mass who are doing awesome things, many of which are sitting in this room. But there's a critical mass of young people who are capable of doing stuff. But the second thing I wanted to prove when I went on to try and start Spring Age was we're not just leading our own lives for our own lives, but we're actually capable of coming up with some of the most incredible game-changing innovations. Innovations and solutions that are going to be solutions for our problems in Africa. And I've kind of coined it Afrovation. We are capable of coming up with our own innovations. And so I went on and I said, can I start a movement? Can I start a company that will confirm these findings? But when I started, I was still hit by the bad statistics. These are South African, but the statistics of unemployment. And that's why we started. We want to start Spring Age to create game-changing ideas that will create companies, that will create employment opportunities. When we started, there we go. The stats were hitting us in the face. Some of the drivers of the huge unemployment were simply because the employment creators, which are the government, the businesses, and us, entrepreneurs, were actually not meeting. They weren't finding a place to come together and leverage their spaces of creating employment. Those are the 3 people who create jobs in our country, but they were not finding a place to collaborate and meet each other so they can scale up on their opportunities. So the change we thought in Spring Age that we could bring about was just create a space where they could meet each other. They have the same vision. And let's see what happens when we put the same vision in a place with people who can actually do something about it. So we run a process which we call spring breaks, and that's the general process we follow. Spring breaks are about finding a solution from a common question. So it could be a question in agriculture. How do we create more agricultural opportunities for small-scale farmers? That would be our question. We would go into a spring break and say, well, we need the department in the room with us. We need small-scale farmers. We need young people who have nothing to do with farming as well in the room with us. And we need corporate organizations that have a special interest in this as well. Once we've got the right players, we get out the ideas, we refine the ideas, we pilot them, and then we sort of launch them out and we execute them when we're ready to go. That's the general process. And what we're doing here in our work labs is pretty much zoning into that first part. We're running spring breaks, if you like. It's idea generation processes where different people are coming together, are thinking, are coming with common visions and different spaces of influence to come out with game-changing ideas that we will hear on tomorrow. So those are just some examples of different spring breaks we've had. And as we were running these spring breaks, we learned many different things, as in any startup. You know, you fail, but it's not failure, it's feedback. You know, so we learned many different things as we were running them. We took the learning, we implemented them, and I'd like to share maybe 7 critical things that we do in our space that we can do today and tomorrow as we're coming up with our ideas in our work labs that we can practice. The first thing we found is when you're going to run an innovation and collaboration session, you need to make sure that the thing that brings you in the room is urgent and it's really, really intriguing for the people who are around. And I think we've done an incredible job at choosing those work lab topics. They are intriguing, that we've chosen ICT, sustainability, women entrepreneurship. These are issues that are urgent on the African continent. And this makes a compelling case for innovation. Because if we don't innovate, you know what they say? You die. Okay. The second thing we learned was when we innovate, we have to connect to the outside world. Innovation cannot happen in here. We can't come up with game-changing solutions in agriculture if we're not doing it in a rural place. So how do we make sure whatever ideas we come up with in the work labs, we're taking outside with us, or at least testing our assumptions outside? Because we can sit in a fancy, beautiful conference center with really clever people, but the things we are building are empowering those outside who are unable to be in here. So let's make sure that we're keeping our innovation as accessible as possible. The third thing we learned is we have to be learning all the time. This entire process, and I love the energy in which this entire Sweden and Zambia has been coming about. It's been about, we're just learning, we're piloting, we're seeing what works. We're taking in every single step. And just talking to Karen yesterday after her work lab, it was lovely to see how many people who went to work lab, I think it's one, about building a co-working space. How many people went into that work lab not actually knowing what a co-working space was in the first place? But once we had all learned and gotten to the same page of what it was, the ideas to build that space started rolling out. So, I mean, you can't actually underestimate what everybody's taking out of here and how it impacts what they do when they leave here. And even the people who are quiet around the table, they're probably thinking, not all of us need to talk to know that we're taking something in. So innovation is always about learning. The next thing we learned a lot is if you want to come up with a game-changing idea, you need to have uncommon connections. You need to make sure that there are people who know nothing about that specific topic who will bring a completely different angle to it.